Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studios in Phoenix, Arizona, it's time for Phoenix Business Radio, spotlighting the city's best businesses and the people who lead them.
Welcome to Phoenix Business RadioX. I'm your host, Karen Nowicki, and I'd like to welcome you to AZ TechCast, sponsored by the Arizona Technology Council. AZ TechCast is dedicated to covering innovation and technology in Arizona and beyond. Broadcasted monthly, AZ TechCast invites leading experts to have real conversations about what's happening in the tech sector across the state of Arizona. From regional news to innovative startups, companies, and emerging technologies, AZ TechCast covers the critical issues and economic trends propelling the state's growing tech ecosystem. And I'd like to thank Arizona Commerce Authority, AZ TechCast 2020 innovation sponsor. The Arizona Commerce Authority is the state's leading economic development organization with a streamlined mission to grow and strengthen Arizona's economy. The Commerce Authority uses a three-pronged approach to advance the overall economy: recruit, grow, and create. I'd also like to thank our 2020 Tech Advocate sponsor, JDH Insights. A leader in coaching and executive development, JDH Insights is committed to helping organizations cultivate and leverage their most important and complex asset, their humans. Visit jdhinsights.com to enhance leadership and improve team dynamics to take your business to the next level. And with that, let's give a warm welcome to today's featured guests. Please help me welcome Andrew Christian, Vice President of Business Development and Defense at Nikola Motor Company, and Dominic Papa, Vice President of Smart State Initiatives at the Arizona Commerce Authority. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thanks, Karen. Thanks for having us.
Excited to get into our conversation today. Innovative automotive companies are playing a significant role in enabling the growth of Arizona's electric and autonomous vehicle market. As the technology for self-driving and electric cars become more advanced and greater adoption of these technologies evolve, challenges and opportunities abound. During today's TechCast, these distinguished experts will share their expertise and insight on the impact of modern transportation on communities, how the EV market is changing the automotive industry, the promise and pitfalls of autonomous driving, and the necessary infrastructure needed to bring it from sci-fi to total reality. We have a lot of ground to cover, so let's get started. And again, thank you both for being here. I would love to start off with both of you sharing a little bit about your background. We had a chance to do that in I'll call it a green room, even though we're virtual, for lack of a better word. But if you would tell our audience, please, a little bit about yourself and how you landed at the role that you're participating in right now with the organization or company you represent today. And Dom, would you mind getting started for us first?
Of course, be happy to. So, again, Dom Papa, the Vice President of Smart State Initiatives at the Arizona Commerce Authority. But I'm really kind of a city guy. I used to work for the city of Phoenix for then Councilman Gates. He's now supervisor of the county. And he really brought me in to really help try to drive a smart city strategy for the city of Phoenix. And so my kind of background and my education has always been in local government, urban management. We realized that when I was at the city of Phoenix, we really struggled to really get initiatives up and off the ground and really get things moving in the smart city space. And so at the time, we were getting really frustrated. And I started to do a lot of research on traditionally well-known smart cities: Dubai, Barcelona, Helsinki, San Francisco. We all know them. And what we realized is that they all had some sort of outside organization that could sit in the community and really drive technology and innovation forward from the outside in. So at the time, we took a look around the greater Phoenix region, and there really wasn't one of those organizations. And so I'd said, okay, I partnered with my co-founder, Brian Dean, and we started a technology smart city nonprofit called the Institute for Digital Progress. We worked with cities to drive smart city efforts. And that's when we had this idea of, why are we trying to solve city challenges? These challenges cross municipal boundaries. We really need to look at these challenges from scale. And so we decided to create a smart region. And we launched that smart region, which includes the 22 cities, the county, Arizona State University, leading industry partners like Cox Communications, Dell Technologies, T-Mobile. And it's called The Connected. And so we officially launched that in November of last year. We just hit our 1-year anniversary. And so we're really excited about it. But once we launched that, that's when Sandra asked me to come join the Arizona Commerce Authority and kind of spread smart city ideas and governance models across the entire state and try to uplift all communities so that way they can benefit from these technologies. And so that's kind of how I got to where I am today.
Love it. Dom, can you explain smart cities for our listeners who may not be familiar with that phrase?
Yeah, it's a difficult phrase to nail down. The running joke in the circuit is that you ask 10 mayors what a smart city is, and you're going to get 12 answers because no one knows, right? And basically, what I like to tell, especially city managers, mayors, the average citizen, there is no end state to become a smart city. It's more about the culture and the way you really try to answer questions in a more collaborative, more systematic way. And so it's really leveraging, emerging technologies and data to really make better, more informed decisions that could, improve the quality of service that our governments are delivering or improve the quality of life for our citizens and businesses. And so I like to say a smart city, it's a journey, not an end state. And it's a really, it's a kind of a culture and a culture change for local government.
That's helpful. And if Steve were here with us, he usually co-hosts with me, Steve Zylstra with Arizona Tech Council, I'm sure he would be nodding his head in agreement because I know that's a big part of course, the role that he plays and his entire organization as well. So thank you so much for that great introduction. Andy, how about you? Give us a little background about you or a lot of background, whatever.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you, Karen, for hosting, and Dom, great to see you again. Dom and I have partnered on a few different technology events, and it's great to see him again. My story really starts back in 1989 when I joined the United States Marine Corps. I came in as an infantry Marine, and soon after was commissioned as an officer. I got recruited into the special operations community. Along that journey and path, I did 14 deployments, many of those combat deployments, and finished in 2017 as the Special Operations Task Force Commander during the battle for Mosul. So removing ISIS from the battlefield in Mosul. And that's really where I got my taste for innovation and working in teams to problem solve and methodically think through how innovation can help you on the battlefield, but not only the battlefield, but in my second chapter, working here with Nikola Motor. So I was recruited by the CEO, Trevor Milton. At that time, Nikola was very small. We only had 20 employees. We were literally just out of his basement and in a warehouse in Salt Lake City. The company was growing rapidly, and we were wooed to come to Arizona. Governor Ducey was instrumental in that. The Arizona Commerce Authority was very instrumental in that. And now Nikola has expanded and grown and really taking off. We've got almost 500 employees now here in the greater Phoenix area. And so I was originally recruited to do some of the military projects. We did several contracts with the government to introduce electrification in military platforms and introduce fuel cell technology to the military. Now I'm leading a lot of the strategy efforts for infrastructure with electrical vehicle infrastructure and hydrogen infrastructure. So super excited to be here and look forward to this discussion.
I am ready to learn. I'm eager to learn everything I can. So I live in the East Valley, and we have a lot of the testing areas, don't we, Dom, out in East Valley for some of the self-driving vehicles? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's definitely, kind of Waymo has, kind of picked Chandler to kind of be that hub for their, automated vehicle testing. And so a lot of the vehicles that you'll see will be on that East Valley, Chandler, Gilbert, Mesa area, even bleeding into Tempe a lot. And, what I think is really exciting, and I'm sure you all heard that, Waymo was the first company in America, maybe even globally, to launch, a fully automated commercial service. So, they're actually picking up people and delivering them, without a driver. And it's very exciting. And what I think is even more exciting is that Waymo in the industry has been such a really community focused industry. They are in the city of Chandler, really working hand in hand with them to understand, what is it going to be necessary from the government's perspective, from the industry's perspective, to really make these technologies succeed. And I think that's a collaboration you don't see often, right? Oftentimes, industry loves to drive forward and just say, government, get out of my way. But what we're seeing in the automated vehicle industry is this real sense of collaboration, because obviously if you want to commercialize these technologies, we want them to be safe, right? We want them to be secure. And so they've really taken a proactive effort to collaborate closely with local governments, not just Chandler, but across the entire state. And so it's very exciting to see what turned out to be a small test and now a bigger test, and hopefully soon, full regional and statewide deployment. We're excited to watch where it goes.
I've been, watching it for at least a couple of years, right? And seeing it over and over in the area that I spend most of my time in. So for me, it's just kind of natural to see that progression. But let's take it a little bit wider than that, of course. Are electric vehicles finally having their heyday and coming into the mainstream? And how about self-driving cars? Let's talk about that. And also, can you predict what percentage of cars will be electric by 2030? Either of you can jump in there.
Sure, I'll start on that. I really think electric vehicles are on the cusp of worldwide adoption now.
Mhm.
And why I say that is not only have you seen a transformational process occurring with major automotive companies where they are on board now, and in the past they would fight it. They would build 2 or 3 cars that were very small, maybe not all that attractive. And early adopters would buy them, people that believe in electric vehicle technology, but they weren't a car for the masses. Tesla came along and others in the industry and started designing cars that people found very useful, fun to drive, had high performance, and really were pretty much maintenance free. So once that happened and those cars were produced economically, you saw major automotive manufacturers make the switch. Along at the same time, you saw governments starting to mandate really what I call the death of diesel, or the death of the internal combustible engine. So once you started to see government step in and regulate it more heavily in Europe, more heavily in Asia, now in the United States, California kind of leading the charge there, you're going to see by 2030, 2035 that this is going to be in full implementation. Now, it takes a little bit longer for these processes to take place. It takes a little bit longer to make the conversions. We're going to talk today a little bit about the impacts to infrastructure and the grid and the APSs and the SRPs of the world that are trying to figure this out along with industry. And they're going to be willing partners. And you're going to see big oil, also jump into the electric vehicle game and come up with creative solutions, not only for electric vehicles, but for hydrogen-powered fuel cell vehicles. And it's an exciting time. And I really think you hit it on the head. By 2030, 2035, we're gonna be very close to adoption, in my opinion. And a lot of that is going to be regulated. But we got to make sure we take care of the industry too. We can't just impose laws that they can't meet the demands and the timelines and do it economically. So we have to figure all this out together. More importantly.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And maybe just to touch on, what we're really excited about on the autonomous vehicle side of the house. I mean, just think about from the government's perspective, some of the benefits that come along with this autonomous vehicle technology. I mean, the increased safety, the potential reduction in traffic accidents, fatalities. I think I read somewhere that it was estimated kind of over 500,000 lives could be saved through the autonomous vehicle technology. The reduction in commutes, the more productive workers can be as they're commuting from work to home or work to travel, vacation. And think about also to go along with the traffic fatalities, the incidents. Think about the reduction of that, what that means in public safety costs. It's just incredible the amount of money cities and states spend on public safety when in terms of traffic accidents. And of course, as Andy mentioned, economic boosts. I mean, so much money is getting dumped into R&D in this space. We really see if we're a for progressive state like we have been, we're really going to reap the benefits of the economic development that follows. And so that's kind of some of the thoughts that the government is thinking about when it comes to autonomous vehicles. And Andy hit the nail on the head with the electric side of the house.
What are the risks and challenges then with the future of the automotive industry?
It's a great question, Karen, and Dom was alluding to it. Imagine that you're an engine manufacturer and your factory makes pistons. And now this electric vehicle boom is happening. And now there's no more demand signal for pistons. These companies are going to have to cross-train employees into different sectors, right? They're going to have to be battery experts now. They're going to have to be wiring harness experts. They're going to have to understand infrastructure and fuel cell and hydrogen and all these new emerging technologies. They're literally going to have to innovate or they're going to die. So I think government has an obligation too to step in and make sure that we're not pushing regulation down their throats so fast that they can't adopt to this new way of thinking, and that we set them up for success. And I think largely the government knows that, understands that, and we have to move through this process together. But it's happening. The transformation is occurring now. You talked about how fast will it happen in the United States? A good example would be Norway. Norway already is about 50% electric vehicle.
Wow.
They're really the world's leader when it comes to electric vehicle adoption. The United States is hovering around between 3 and 5%, but growing every year with who's adopting electric vehicles. Some of those have been subsidized, right? So there's subsidies occurring. When you buy a brand new electric vehicle, you get a $7,500 tax credit, so you're incentivized to purchase. But there'll be other regulations, and there'll be some goodness that comes out of the technology, and we can talk about that a little. We were talking about just passenger automotive right now with the company I work for. We're going to produce a semi-truck that's going to be driving next year and in full production next year in 2021. That's going to have a 750 kilowatt battery pack. That's like the equivalent of 7 Teslas parked together. So when you think about that much energy, what do you do with that energy when you're not using it? Well, you could bi-directionally reverse the flow of that 750 kilowatt battery, push it back to the grid, to the APSs and SRPs of the world, and power things. So give back to the grid when energy demand is very high and pull back when energy is cheaper. So there's an economic algorithm piece to this that you'll see companies getting very crafty of when they're charging vehicles and how they're offsetting these vehicles when they're charging. And that's an exciting time because the infrastructure has to keep pace with the technology that we're putting out, right? It's what we refer to at Nikola all the time as the chicken and the egg. The two technologies have to come, infrastructure and the actual automotive engineering that you're doing. If you don't match those technologies, then you're not going to roll out the timing to be synchronized. So that's very important. And I think we're headed in the right direction. And discussions like we're having today are going to be pivotal to airing out these issues and problem solving.
Yeah, Andy, I would love to ask you a question on that. One of the main reasons we created the Smart Region, bringing those 22 cities and towns and the county together was to start to, think together, act together, innovate together, then, procure and deploy technology and infrastructure together because, I'm talking to a lot of these cities and, they want to encourage EV adoption, right? And so they're thinking about, where can we put these EV charging stations and other sorts of infrastructure. But how important is it that, we start to look at the infrastructure play at scale and not every individual municipality trying to create their own kind of infrastructure plan? I mean, would you say kind of, in your dream world, there's kind of a region-wide infrastructure plan and strategy? Would that help really accelerate, the adoption and deployment of, electric vehicles?
It certainly would, and it's been well known the Biden administration's coming in with a plan, especially with electric vehicles, to incentivize people and really take the lead on some of the infrastructure incentives of how many charging stations they would like to see across the United States. So I think having some sort of federal policy that sets the guidelines and incentivizes municipalities to make the transition is helpful. If you get augmented some money to build some infrastructure, that's helpful. And then I think you see, the energy companies are realizing that there's a piece and a play there for them. So they're incentivizing customers to do that. We're right now here at Nikola at our headquarters, we're working with the SRP. We have a EV charging station that's going in place to charge 50 employee vehicles, and then we'll expand that to up to 200 over time with solar. So I think most companies are going to look at that. How can you take care of your employees, incentivize them to drive electric vehicles to reduce the carbon footprint, and then follow the federal mandates and guidelines of trying to make this transformation a little bit easier.
How should policymakers prepare in 3 areas? We've talked a lot about infrastructure, but how about for jobs and innovation as well? So we're talking not only at a state level and municipality, but talking, countrywide, really. What are your thoughts then around how folks should prepare, policymakers in particular, in infrastructure, jobs, and innovation? What aspect of those have we not spoken to yet?
Well, I'll give you the Nikola example of why we came to Arizona. We were obviously incentivized to come here, and Governor Ducey, rolled out the red carpet, and Arizona Commerce Authority was instrumental in that too. But we had access to a great school at ASU with a great engineering program. Yeah. So when you look at the STEM portion of this, and you look at science and mathematics and the engineers of the future, we're going to need a lot of great, brilliant engineers to solve some of these complex problems, both infrastructure and engineering of new and emerging technologies. We're starting to see now, drone deliveries, and some of that runs on battery, and we're in the infancy of really just a technology transformation. the internal combustible engine, largely in the diesel engine, hasn't changed in 80 to 100 years. It's really the same technology. What we're trying to do, and that's why I keep saying transformational, because it really is. And in order to make those kind of leaps, you need to just have brilliant people working on those kind of issues and problem solving on a daily basis. And it's happening so fast. If you just go back in time 5 years ago, the electric vehicles were getting 100 miles, maybe 150 if you had a great car. Now we're talking 400 miles, 500 miles. Lucid down the road in Casa Grande has a car coming out, the Lucid Air, that'll go 400 plus miles, almost 5.
Wow.
So you're starting to now see the electric vehicle really surpass the internal combustible engine of how far it will go before it needs to be recharged. And that battery technology, hydrogen infrastructure, electrical infrastructure is only going to get better as technology improves. So it's an exciting time.
What do you
Definitely.
think?
And, I'll just say from my side, kind of a motto that I like to always speak about when I'm at conferences or talking about what we're building in Arizona is that collaboration is our next competitive advantage. And I think, as Andy mentioned, no one wants to just be kind of regulated down to. And so what we've really tried to do is take a proactive approach to making sure we have all the stakeholders at the table in order to drive this forward together, because I think really only together are we going to make the kind of strides that are going to be necessary to see these two industries flourish. And I think a perfect example of this is when Governor Ducey in 2018 signed an executive order that's launched the Institute for Automated Mobility. It was really to help, accelerate the commercialization of these technologies, but it's a public-private academic partnership, as I like to say. It's got, leading industry partners like Intel, Mobileye, State Farm, and Exponent. It's got the state agencies of ADOTS, Arizona Commerce Authority, Department of Public Safety, and then it's got all three state institutions, ASU, U Arizona, and NAU. And the goal of that is to really get all the necessary parties around the table and say, okay, we want these technologies out and on the road, but we realize that each of us has a different perspective or a different incentive with what we need to do, right? Government needs to regulate for safety. Industry wants to commercialize and make a profit. And the research institutions want to do research and write, papers and best practices. And so it was really a conscious effort from the governor to say, okay, if we want these vehicles to succeed, these technologies to succeed, we have to do this together. We've got to collaborate. And I think that's a great example of kind of how Arizona is trying to take a different approach and not just say government is going to say what you need to do, when you need to do it, and how you need to do it, but we're going to work on this together to make sure we can all be successful in the end.
Is there an industry or a vertical that we need more encouragement to keep showing up in these conversations, or do you feel like you have everybody at all the right people at the table already?
I think we're getting there. I think, like Dom said, if you bring these industry experts together and you bring government and municipality, local leaders, and everybody is focused toward the common goal of solving the problem and framing the problem correctly too, right? What problem are we trying to solve? Mm-hmm. So far, what I've seen out of the collaborative groups that I've sat in, we're heading in the right direction. And everybody is really laser focused on understanding where this technology is going, trying to recruit great companies to come to Arizona, and then how fast can we bring these solutions to market, and how do we have the right workforce that can be trained to work on these problem sets? How are we going to improve transportation in Arizona? How are we going to speed up all of these requirements and, more importantly, synchronize them? Have the infrastructure match, and make sure that we can deliver it on budget, right? I mean, because there's a lot of great ideas out there, but if they're so expensive, that becomes an issue too. So you have to find, the equal footing there and present plans that are not only palatable, but executable.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Andy. I think you really said it so well. And just from my perspective, the governance side of things, if there's one group that I would really like to more fully engage, it's the K through 12. I think, and you talked about the great universities we have, and we're even doing really, really well bringing our community college systems into the conversation because they are really, truly kind of that workforce development pipeline as well. But I would like to see us even start even younger and bring those K-12s, into this conversation and really start to to get at this workforce, from only as young as we possibly can. So that's my only addition to that.
I love that you've shared that because I was thinking the same thing. I mentioned again when we were getting ready to go on air, I've got a 13-year-old in the Kyrene School District, and if he's not a professional baseball player, right, then he wants to be an engineer. So mom keeps trying to flip the script, right? Hey, do both, but I wouldn't know how to encourage him around that. My background is communications. I was an educator for years. I totally agree, Dom, that K-12 education, and when we had the 3 university presidents on with Steve and I actually for this particular show, a lot of the conversation was just that. How do we start to really reach those kids who are K-12, get them excited about STEM careers, help them kind of see towards the future and help us shape that future? So I love that you mentioned that as well. I'm thinking from a perspective of the general layperson or the consumer as well. What is our responsibility as we begin to make this transition and move forward? Like, how do we prepare and how can we best support where we're headed?
Sure. I think when it comes to looking at all these emerging technologies, really educating yourself, right? Reading and learning from others within the industry about the technology. And is it a good fit for you? Is it a good fit for your family? How fast would you like to adopt a technology like an electric vehicle? Do you want to put solar on your house? Do you want to have a power wall where if there's a fire or whatever, you'll still have electricity in your house? These are all new emerging technologies that'll be useful for the consumer in the future. But it really starts with having faith and confidence in the technology. So you always see early adopters jump onto things, right? The person that just loves the green movement or loves an electric vehicle and they get excited about that. So they buy it even if the vehicle has problems and they're willing to work through those friction points. But mass adoption doesn't take place till people are really confident and they believe in a technology and they understand it. And it's not complex, it's easy, it benefits the consumer in many ways. So I think you have to, number one, be smart about what product you're going to buy. You have to educate yourself, but the product has to be useful. It can't be the perception that I'm going to have an electric vehicle and I'm going to suffer from range anxiety because I think I'm going to run out of juice on the 101, right? So you have to be comfortable with that and understand the capabilities of the technology and how it can benefit you.
Completely agree. I would say educate and then engage. Oftentimes from the government's side of the house, we hold community forums. We get out there and try to really engage the community, and that civic engagement isn't quite top of mind for people. So I would say, educate yourself and then engage as much as possible with your local government, with your state government. Talk to us, if there are concerns or whatever they may be, because that's our role, is really to ensure that you are educated, but then you are protected. And so really get out there and engage with us and our partners like Nikola, right?
I'm curious if you think that gas stations are going to go away eventually.
No, Karen, it's a great question. I get that question all the time. I don't think they will. I think it's like anytime you introduce a disruptive technology, they're going to have to adapt, right? So these gas stations should be converted to EV charging stations, and that'll be a phased approach, right? You'll see hydrogen fuel cell, so hydrogen stations in conjunction with electric vehicle stations in the future, operating at various gas stations as you phase out the internal combustible engine. So I think there's room, and that's part of that transition of that transformational process I was telling you. We have an obligation to these people that we just don't put them out of work. We cross-train them into a new and emerging innovative sector that they can get a great paying job in and get retrained. So I think it's exciting. I think you also have to realize that this process is happening, this transformation is occurring, and get on board the train, right? You don't want to be left behind.
Are there gas station companies that are already making that transition? I'm trying to think if I've seen any. I don't really pay attention because I'm still driving a typical vehicle.
Sure, and there are. I mean, if you go out to California, and obviously California has more electric vehicles
Sure.
than anywhere in the country. And if you look at some of those stations, there's electric vehicle charging stations all over the place. Some are independently owned, not in conjunction with gas stations. Some Shell stations have, gasoline, and then right next to that is a hydrogen station to fill your hydrogen fuel cell vehicle. So there are many, and I think that's what you'll see. You'll see a combination of conversion happening, and what a lot of companies like Nikola, we're looking at all those type of partnerships as well, where it doesn't make sense to recreate infrastructure if infrastructure already exists, right? So the truck driver in our case that's our market, semi trucks. They're going to have to stop and get a cup of coffee at a truck stop, right? They're going to have to eat some food. So having discussions with those type of people and looking at infrastructure locations where you're not going to make the driver drive out of his way and build something in the middle of nowhere, you use that existing infrastructure and you just repurpose it. And I think that's what you're going to see a lot in the future with hydrogen, with electric vehicles, et cetera.
Our friend Jill in the background here has another great question. Will future generations lose interest in obtaining a driver's license with the future of autonomous vehicles, right? Learning to drive used to be a sort of coming of age thing. And I mean, obviously that's something that my kiddo's looking forward to. And I remembered the fear and also the excitement of having a driver's license. What would you say about that? And I actually, before I ask that question fully, I'm even thinking about some of my nieces and nephews who are around the driving age and maybe even a little bit older. And a handful of them have not obtained their driver's license, which is very different than the generation I grew up in. What are your thoughts around that?
Maybe I'll go first on that one. I don't really know if I have a good answer because you're exactly right. I mean, when I turned 16, I was begging my mom to take me as soon as the MVD opened to get my driver's license. But I have friends now that have kids that, are 17, 18 and still haven't got their driver's license. I think, I don't think it'll completely go away. I think, people still want to go on long road trips and do all other sorts of, travel related activities. So I think the driver's license will always be needed and wanted. It's just, I think we might not see, not such a big rush or excitement to get it. So I really don't know if there's a good answer. It's been interesting to watch, that's for sure.
Karen, I think you bring up an interesting point because I think if you were to have a child today, by the time that child is 16 and has a driver's license, there probably won't be a need for it other than nostalgia of getting behind the wheel of maybe an old antique ice engine car, or you keep that in your inventory for just emotional purposes, the love of driving, whatever. Because bottom line, it won't be as safe as this technology is rolled out. It'd be much safer to drive in an autonomous car because it's going to be updating that computer in milliseconds off of 5G and in the future, faster speeds. Where driving a car, you'll put yourself at risk in the future when these systems get so good that they're just going to react and be smarter than the human brain can function. So from that aspect, I think we'll drive cars because we love driving, and I love driving, and I'm sure Dom and Karen, you do, and your son, when he gets his license, will as well. But I think it'll be not as safe if you fast forward 10 years from now if you're behind the wheel of a car.
And that speaks to infrastructure too, doesn't it? Is it true? And I don't know where I'm getting this, but is it true that a typical car that we're driving today, we would need to have more autonomous vehicles and electrical vehicles that are prepared to be on the road with other vehicles like that, as opposed to the ones we're driving today, right? So as we make this transition, it really does have to go in one direction. Am I right? It's kind of a question, more of a thought there. But I wonder about that interim as we get more and more vehicles, and then these older vehicles have to fade out. Is there an issue with these cars, both these types of vehicles on the road at the same time?
I wouldn't say an issue, but I would say it'll be much safer if you have multiple cars that are smart cars. Like we're talking about smart cities, but smart cars, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cars that have LiDAR or radar or ultrasonic sensors, and they're constantly updating and feeding information and getting smarter. And you can upgrade their software over the air, which means by the internet, right? So the cars are constantly collecting data, constantly understanding there's a stop sign there, there's a red light there, and they're getting smarter and smarter, therefore safer and safer. So if you've kept internal combustible engines on the cars that weren't smart, and you have that human factor of driving, there's probably more of a chance of getting in an accident with that person with a car not as sophisticated or as smart. So your point, I think, is valid. I think the more smart cars you have out there, once the technology is 100% effective and safe, it will just create a safer driving environment. So insurance rates should go down in the future, and we'll have less accidents, and there'll be less congestion on the highways. So I think it'll be an exciting time. I think where the challenge is, people like us that are talking about this, we love driving cars, right? And we love to get behind a car. We love the feel of a car, and I don't know how fast we'll be willing to give that up, but it'll definitely be safer to be in an automated car.
And Ken, I think that's also a good point about kind of just infrastructure. A lot of these autonomous vehicle companies are coming to us and saying, can we have dedicated lanes? Because we know our, technology is safe, but we don't, it's the, the human driven vehicles that, if if they hit us, it sets back the industry, years. And so they're really asking for these, dedicated lanes. And I think it goes to a broader infrastructure question of, what infrastructure is going to be required to really see these, these vehicles accelerate. And honestly, I think the answer at this point is we don't know. And I just want to highlight another fact that, that's why that Institute for Automated Mobility, they're actually currently testing as we speak they're testing to answer this exact question about infrastructure, right? They're doing work up in Anthem, which is just north of the Phoenix region. They call it the Smart Drive Test Bed to really equip intersections with cameras to test light detecting radar systems. And at the same time that they're doing this, this is really interesting. They're beginning to develop a concept of what they're calling infrastructure as a service. It's really, really interesting. So which it's essentially would entail communication services that would be provided to autonomous vehicles to impact the safety and efficiency of the vehicle. So this sort of infrastructure, when proved, will play a significant role in really enhancing the safety and efficiency for roadway operators such as first responders or law enforcement or even maintenance teams. So again, I think leveraging collaborations to test, to prove technologies will help us get these vehicles out on the road quicker.
Fascinating. It's interesting, too, to think that Edison and Henry Ford were buddies, and now their ideas are coming together, right, over 100 years later. What do you think that either of these folks would have to say about the automotive industry today?
It's a great question. And it's a great analogy. I think you're seeing as the merging of technology. Henry Ford is obviously an icon and a great innovator, but the product, like we talked about, largely hasn't changed in 100 years, right? I mean, you've got the same type of engine, pistons, oil changes, etc. Whereas Edison and Nikola Tesla, AC versus DC, alternating current versus direct current. That's what those two were kind of known for. It's the merging of new and innovative ways to do things, and it's exciting and transformational. And Ford is on board too, right? So if you look at Ford, they're going to have the electric Mustang out here very, very shortly. So it's one of those things where the companies that are innovative are all going to adopt these new technologies, or they're going to get left behind, quite frankly. And you'll see new and very cool and emerging partnerships, right? Because some of these technologies are very expensive. So it's expensive to build a battery factory, have a whole new global supply chain for things that didn't exist or there was not a need for 5 years ago. I think you're going to see a lot more partnerships where automotive companies join forces to reduce costs. And I think the days of brand new companies trying to get into that game will slowly start to diminish unless they partner through the power of partnership. Because it's just going to be too hard to keep up with the competition as people merge and start to build very sophisticated cars. And you see more and more adoption occurring.
Tom, anything to add to that?
No, completely agree. And I just actually want to, ask Andy something, talk about innovative partnerships, something that caused a lot of the municipalities get excited, a lot of city managers, a lot of public works directors, was the partnership with Republic. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because, talk about transformation of fleets and trash vehicles. That really got a lot of people in local government excited. Can you just hit on that a little bit about that innovative partnership?
Sure. We're excited to be working and partnering with Republic to produce, a refuse truck that'll be, a state-of-the-art truck that meets their requirements and their specifications. And more importantly, they're realizing that they've got a requirement as they're seeing a global demand for more efficient vehicles that aren't going to emit diesel fumes. And the days of hearing the trash truck come down the road are going to be gone. The Nikola trash refuse truck is going to sneak up on you in stealth mode, right? And you're going to be late to deliver your garbage cans to the street. So it's going to be exciting, but again, Republic is going to be an early adopter of this technology. They're realizing that they have to make the switch, and it's not only going to be Republic services. It's going to be fire trucks. It's going to be ambulances. It's going to be construction equipment. This transformation is not limited to the automotive sector, right? It's going to go global, and it's going to impact everything. So it's exciting. So going back to the infrastructure problem, it's going to create new and unique infrastructure requirements, right? So we have to really engage industry. And when I talk about that, I'm talking about the energy companies, APS and SRP here in Arizona. We have discussions with them all the time because having those partners come together and solve these very complex issues. You can't overwhelm a substation, or you can't impact the grid because you got all these electric vehicles being introduced. You've got to match the infrastructure requirements and allow that to grow near simultaneous with these technologies being implemented into these companies for mass adoption. So it's exciting, and I think everybody realizes it's a very challenging problem that we've never faced, at least from an automotive transformation and an equipment transformation. But it also is exciting because whether you believe in climate change or not, it is going to be good for the climate. It's going to be good for the air in Arizona. It's going to be good for everybody's health, and we're excited to be a part of that.
Great question,
it's just
Dom.
Incredible, Karen. Yeah, and Karen, I think you could see why we're so excited to have Nikola here in our backyard. Tremendous partnerships. We're just excited for the future.
I'm curious, with you two having been young boys at one point, did you ever think that you would be in the roles that you're playing right now, having these kinds of conversations?
No.
Yeah.
I was probably like your son, thought I was going to be a professional baseball player or a race car driver or something like that. But and my advice to your son would be an engineer and be a professional baseball player. That'd be a good choice. But Karen, seriously, no. But I would say that for me, there's a passion there, and I know Dom has a passion too for it. And it's just exciting to be a part of it because these industries really attract really brilliant people, brilliant engineers, brilliant global supply chain people that are just laser focused on wanting to be a part of a great culture and a movement, and be part of an innovative technology, and really just be excited to get up in the morning and get behind a product that they believe in, that they also think is contributing and saving the planet. So I'm blessed to be a part of that here at Nikola, and I know Dom feels the same way with what he's doing. The best part about it is just having daily interaction with these super smart people and being able to gauge our customer base who are also excited about these new technologies.
Tom, as a little boy,
no for me as well. I played soccer most of my life, and I just happened to work for a technology startup when I came back to Phoenix while I was getting my master's degree in urban administration against city management. And I kind of put the two together, the tech startup and local government. And I just realized technology can really impact people's lives and solve difficult challenges. I mean, think about, the ability for autonomous vehicle to go into a low-income neighborhood, to pick up a single mom and enable her to take her, infant child to medical services, and that thereby decreases the infant mortality rate for, our city or region, our states. I mean, that's what kind of makes me wake up in the morning and be excited about what I do. I'm not on the technical side, but I'm on the people side. I love bringing people together to solve challenges and really improve the quality of life. And so it's been so fun doing what I do and getting to interact with people like Andy and companies like Nikola that are really making a difference, not only for the environment, but for people's lives. It's just truly exciting.
It's interesting. So I've had the studio for 3 years now here in Tempe, and we've had over 800 B2B podcasts, radio shows like this with over 2,000 executive leaders and professionals like yourselves. And I am so proud to be an Arizonan in the business world because and Dom, you alluded to this at the very beginning of our conversation. We really are about collaboration, and we're seeing how we have to reach across the aisle and have these conversations broadly and hyper-focused with the folks who really can make a difference for not only our community, but our world at large. And I'm watching it unfold and happen in my small way, right? Just being here to help storytell and hear what's going on with the boots on the ground. But it's phenomenal. I have rarely had an opportunity to meet somebody these last 3 years doing this that hasn't said something similar. Like, we are so blessed to be part of the Arizona community and carving our way and paving the way on behalf of technology in our future.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you both. Yeah, thank you both so much for being here. It's been a pleasure to learn quite a bit about where we're headed with vehicles and trucking and our infrastructure as it relates to our roads here in Arizona. Is there anything I didn't think to ask that is worthy of sharing, or any last thoughts that you'd like to put out there before we close the segment today?
No, Karen, I would just like to say thank you. And again, to Dom, great to be with you again. And we just look forward to an exciting and really emerging technology era. And it's going to be great to watch it happen.
Couldn't have said it better. Let's collaborate.
Yep, keep it up. And then the last thing, I'm curious, what was the car that you wanted to drive when you were, 15, 16? What car did you want to drive, and what car did you end up driving? So for me, I didn't want to drive the station wagon with the wood paneling on the sides. I wanted to be driving my dad's Cougar. I think it was a 67 Cougar, and I ended up getting to drive that vehicle. But boy, that big station wagon pulling into the the ATM at the bank and taking off half the paneling as I pulled out of there, that was an awful experience. But how about for you guys? Let's go out with some fun. What car would you have loved to have had at that age, and what car did you actually drive? Dom, let's have you start first.
All right, so I'm actually lucky. I actually got to drive the car I wanted to drive, which was a 65 Volkswagen bus. Believe it or not, I had hair down to here in high school, and was a kicker on the football team and all that. So I drove a 65 Volkswagen bus. I always wanted one, and I was lucky enough to find one and drive one.
Love it.
Yep.
Karen, are you talking about the car I was driving at 16, or the car that I always wanted and I'm driving now? Which one?
I'd love to hear about both. Dom, I think we
Oh.
both would like to hear about both.
Yeah. So the 16-year-old car was an old beat up Camaro that I scraped enough money together which I also thought was pretty cool. But I always had dreamed of a Porsche 911, and luckily I got one last year. So it took me to get to 52 years of age to be able to get it, but I did.
But you did it. Awesome. Yes, Dom's clapping for you.
Yep.
Love it. Well, thank you both again. You've been listening to AZ TechCast, brought to you by Phoenix Business Radio with Business RadioX. Today's AZ TechCast was brought to you by the Arizona Commerce Authority, the state's leading economic development organization with a streamlined mission to grow and strengthen Arizona's economy. Thank you again, Arizona Commerce Authority. And also thank you to JDH Insights, the 2020 Tech Advocate sponsor. Visit jdhinsights.com to enhance leadership and improve team dynamics to take your business to the next level. If you're interested in being a podcast participant or a sponsor for the Council's AZ TechCast, please contact marketing@aztechcouncil.org to lock in your opportunity to further position you as a tech expert, influencer, and innovator. Some media leans left, some lean right, and we lean business here at Business Radio X. Until next time, I'm Karen Nowicki. Thanks for listening.